Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored to you by Barry Collins Chevrolet Dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. You can also check out barrycollin.com for their newest selection of GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210. I really appreciate Mark Collins having some faith in me and putting me sponsoring my podcast show as well. And just give me 1 second, guys. This is also season 4, episode 29 of my podcast as well. But again, you guys can check out Barry Collins' website at barrycollin.com and also check them out at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. And really appreciate Barry Collin Dealership having faith in me and to sponsoring my Live with CDP Sports Talk show as well. And I'm looking forward to my show. Just give me 1 minute, guys, and I'm going to bring on my guest today. He's a local Guelph boy, and his name is Scott Fraser, and he's with Rogers TV with Guelph Life. He's a co-host on the Guelph Life show for Rogers TV. He also does some fill-in work as a TV host for Rogers TV's Ontario Hockey League coverage, and he's also does some work for Gryphon-Vision at the University of Guelph, and he's also the YouTube channel for the Guelph Royals of the IBL's Intercounty Baseball League. He's our play-by-play announcer, Scotty Fraser. So I'm looking forward to having my friend and Rogers TV co-worker on and talk about his career in broadcasting and maybe a little bit about the 2022 Guelph Royals season, and also maybe a little bit about the Guelph Griffins and maybe about the OHL as well. So just bear with me, guys, and I'm going to bring on Scott. Good afternoon, Scott. How you doing?
Hey, buddy. I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and I can attest to everything you said about Barry Collin. It's a great dealership. I actually got one of my first cars there, and whether you're looking for old, new, used, or leases, It's a fantastic place to go. So I'm glad that they have faith in you and you have faith in them, because that's correct.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do a good job, and I thought they just told me to do it when I felt like advertising. I just thought maybe at the beginning of the show would be the first. So it's new for the dealership, and this is new for me as well.
Well, it's a fantastic partnership, so I'm happy you guys found each other. But yeah, let's talk about some sports, pal.
Yeah, I was going to say, since the IBL finals are starting tonight, and I did have a show last night with Dylan Baker on from the London Majors, what are your thoughts, Scotty, just quickly on this 2022 IBL Intercounty Baseball League's finals matchup, rematch of last year's series between the London Majors, the defending champs, against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this time it's a best of 7 and not a best of 5. Quickly, thoughts on that?
Quick thoughts are the parity of this IBL season was probably unmatched in any sort of baseball or maybe even pro, semi-pro, or amateur sports that I've seen in my days covering any sport. The way that the London Majors, Guelph Royals, and Welland Jackfish finished off the regular season was one thing. But when you think about the Toronto Maple Leafs, who were right there with them, finishing in 4th, it was really a 4-team race, but when you saw what the Hamilton Cardinals did to Guelph Royals in round 1, it really kind of makes that maybe less true. Now, with London and Toronto going head-to-head, again, I was only really privy to getting to see the Royals' 21 home games firsthand. And a lot of things to like about Toronto, but a lot of things to like about the London Majors. Cleveland Brownlee, obviously, may be the most notable, but obviously that guy behind the plate, Robert Mullen, is just as dangerous at the plate as he is behind the plate and calling pitches and calling the game for the Majors defensively. So a team that I would pick would be the Majors. I think, I know you guys talked about it yesterday, but I think the votes were 4, 5, or 7 in terms of the amount of distance that series will go. I like a lot of the things that the majors have done, and I also have a lot of faith in the Maple Leafs because Toronto, when you go to Christie Pitts, it's not an easy place to win when you're on the road.
Absolutely. And Dylan was telling me about their dimensions, like 290 down the lines and then center field, 330. I don't ever remember in 50 years of being on this planet, a center field at a ballpark being 330. I've seen 385, 390, but 330 to center field.
330 is it's a short distance to go to center field. For example, David E. Hastings Stadium has some pockets. It's built uniquely, for sure. A pocket that says 397 on the wall, but that's not even the deepest part of that part of the ballpark. So 400 feet at certain places is what will be needed to get out of there. Now, at 330 down center, right up Main Street, if you have a couple power hitters, and especially with guys like Cleveland Brownlee, the London Majors look like they could really do some damage at Christie Pitts.
I was going to say, I'm going to go with the majors in 7 games, but I do see each team in this series winning at least one game on the road. I think the Leafs are going to steal one at Labatt Park, and I think the majors are capable of stealing one in Toronto. I just think it's going to go the full 7. That's just my gut feeling.
I would assume so as well, especially with the fact that it's a rematch of last year's final, and it's kind of a different story compared to what the league was like 12 months ago. But I think that there's a lot going on mentally wise for both teams, both managers. Damon Topley, obviously, just with the passing of his father, unfortunately, that Toronto Maple Leafs team has something a little bit more to play for now. So don't be surprised if you see them come out and play a little bit harder than maybe people expect, especially in the early going of this series. And if they steal one in London tonight, who knows, really?
I was going to say, and that first game tonight is 7:35 first pitch from Labatt Park, and it'll be on the London Majors YouTube channel with Noel Smith and Dylan Baker, and I think they do an outstanding job on their YouTube broadcast as well.
Far and away the toast of the league. Both of those guys are setting the bar for the IBL broadcast. And I'm saying that humbly, but also truthfully, that they are the measuring stick that a lot of the other teams want to try to get to with their broadcasts, but without guys like them, it's going to be pretty hard to match it. So they do a fantastic job. They know their stuff and do a good job of making it fun to watch and very enjoyable to be a part of.
Gonna ask you this question since I got you on, Scotty. Is every team in the IBL have a YouTube channel for their broadcast, or is it just certain teams?
To my knowledge, most do. Now, it's the infrastructure being, especially with the COVID seasons that we just kind of hopefully have closed the book on. With the Guelph Royals, it was kind of myself and Sean Fuller, the owner, and Neil Sriwasa, who was my compadre up in the booth, kind of came up with the idea before COVID happened. And unfortunately, we did have a broadcast in place by way of a third party. Signed, sealed, delivered deal. That was in February of 2020. So that came and went before it even got off the ground. And 2 years changes a lot. So by the time the Royals got back to getting onto the field, that opportunity was no longer presenting itself. So for the Royals, I know that this year was the first year that they've had a broadcast in a long time. So I'm not 100% sure on if every single team has one, but I think the vast majority do. And obviously with Noah and Dylan in London, they can attest to this. There is a definite contrast in the quality of it. And I'm not just saying in terms of the on-air talent or anything like that. It's an expensive thing to try to implement into your team. 3 cameras, other employees, more work to be done, technological stuff that is way over my head, and things go wrong perpetually. So it's Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong, and we ran through that all summer long at Hastings Stadium. We were blessed with the best weather for baseball outside of that home opener that was for naught, which we can touch on maybe in a bit. But other than that first game that was ultimately rescheduled for a very good reason, we were blessed with perfect sunshine and not overly humid and not a cloud in the sky certain days. And when it was really hot, just the right amount of clouds. And I can't speak enough to how much I feel how fortunate I feel for how the season unfolded. Now, unfortunately, being friends with a lot of guys on the team by the end of the season and even before that started, I had this belief of you guys are going to win. And it did end a little prematurely, which is a little heart-wrenching for them, especially for certain guys who may or may not be done with their baseball careers by this point now. But it was a special summer no matter what. And it was my first time doing play-by-play, really. So doing it for baseball, it's a lot of talking, and it can take some time. Those IBL games don't move quick. They end up taking, you can fly through 4 innings. And then all of a sudden 5, 6, 7 might take you just as long as 1, 2, 3, 4 did. And then you talk about 8, 9, and game gets tighter. Pitching changes happen. It ends up really kind of coming to an almost halt. So derby nights on a Saturday night, the Royals will play at 7:30 as of mid-June because of the heat. Get to the ballpark at, if you're me, 7:29 p.m. If you're everyone else on the broadcast, maybe a little bit earlier because I'm perpetually just on time. But game starts at 7:30. You're talking game finish around 11:15. So over 3 hours for sure for the vast majority of those home games. So it takes a lot to do what this league's trying to implement with the broadcasts and trying to find people that are willing to come in and do it on a Saturday night or a Tuesday night or whatever night of the week of the home games throughout the summer.
I just think it's great because before you never found out unless you went on a website, and I think this has to be the future of the IBL because it's more exposure for the league, as you know, Scotty. And I've started coming back into following the league again, and it's thanks to the YouTube productions as well. So I really hope going forward these teams will continue to have broadcasts on the YouTube channel.
I can't see why they would heel turn on doing what they've been trying to do now. Again, my first year doing it, my friends around Guelph found out they were watching it on Saturday nights. I didn't even know they were watching, and they would text me about something maybe funny, maybe kind of not funny that I said. And
Yep.
it was heartwarming to hear that they were watching it, but then they would be coming to the games and free ticket or not free ticket, coming in and spending time there and enjoying it and actually wrapping their mind around the quality of this baseball. It's not what people maybe write it off to be. It is fantastic baseball.
Absolutely.
A lot of talent, yes. Obviously easy just to relate to the Dalton Pompey signing the Royals made. But the outside of just guys like him that are big marquee names, you watch this game, there's not very many mistakes made by a lot of the infielders, by a lot of the outfielders, by the pitchers or catchers. It is a fantastic quality.
Absolutely. And I just have a viewer on Liam saying every IBL team has a broadcast on YouTube, but with different variations of quality. But like I said, long term, I think this is the future for the IBL and to grow the league and get more people interested in it. And you're right, like you said, Scotty, it's good baseball. I was a bat boy for the Royals in the 80s, and I loved the league. It was different back then. There was guys that weren't really in shape, and they were using aluminum bats back then instead of wooden bats. But I think the overall quality of the play since I was a bat boy in the 80s has gotten better. These guys, a lot of them are great athletes and definitely, and it's not unaffordable entertainment for fans. I think the Royals were charging $10 and I think the London Majors were charging $5. So it's really good, affordable entertainment, and it is a good product.
Absolutely it is. And you know what, Guelph, I can only speak to the way Guelph is as a sports city. It becomes infectious. So a winning team will obviously breed more fans. So with Guelph getting off to that hot start and then going 19-2 at home in the regular season really, really did them favors. Unfortunately, because that postseason run ended so quickly, didn't really get to reap the benefits of having that crowd grow and grow and grow. Now, there was a running joke where I can't count past 10, which is my own joke, but I would always kind of guesstimate the capacity of the crowd. And certain nights, I genuinely was like, that has to be 900 people on a Tuesday. It was closer to 500-600. So not very close, but still, it's a lot of bodies. The game 5 final of the quarterfinals against Hamilton, it was packed shoulder to shoulder in the grandstands. People were out in the outfield by the bullpen, and then down the baselines, 7 rows deep on either side. And it was 1,900 and some odd fans, which I believe is just shy of the fire code, but sold out of hot dogs. Myself and a couple of the other guys on the team actually had to go run before the game to grab the amenities of the beer garden, and thinking, you know what, there's a chance that the season ends tonight, but do we grab enough for the beer garden for if there is a tomorrow? So it ended up at 15 cases of beer, and with all these people in there, gone by the 7th inning. And it wasn't like it was people being belligerent. It was just these people wanting to support the Royals as a franchise, and to the point where the hot dogs were sold out and we had to go get more mid-game. One of our volunteers went and ran out and grabbed a ton more, and our staff were working like crazy to keep people fed. I went down to take a bathroom break between maybe the 5th or 6th inning. And again, this is at that point, probably my 24th or 25th home game that I had covered. 24th, because the 21 and then the 3 in the quarterfinals. Never seen a lineup for the concessions like I saw. It was from the end of the grandstand bottom step all the way to the front of the line, at least 60, 65 people long probably. And I mean, it was great to see people actually getting behind this team, and it was loud and it was full of energy, and it was a great game. I mean, Hamilton did a fantastic job of bending but not breaking in that one. Down 4-0, Justin Terrasano hit a 3-run shot after Dalton Pompey had opened the scoring in the first inning. They're down 4-0. Claudio was throwing absolute smoke like he always did. He was, I think, relieved of his duties around the 5th or 6th inning, around 80 pitches. And then Jeffrey Nunez came in and did a great job of dealing with the pressure, because he opened up on game 1. He started game 1. And you could see the nervousness in him. That nervousness was still apparent by game 5, but much less controlling. And the minute the crowd got loud, he went to 3-pitch strikeout mode. And it was very endearing to see a guy who had just come to Canada back in August kind of be just welcomed and embraced by this big Guelph crowd. And really, it seemed to mean a lot to him in terms of his performance. Unfortunately, Guelph wasn't able to hold on to the lead and end up coming up short in that 10th inning, but all the credit goes to the Hamilton Cardinals. They did a fantastic job of kind of looking adversity in the face and not being scared of that Royals lineup that was unforgiving to opposing pitchers, especially at Hastings Stadium.
I was gonna say, I've heard some guys critics as well say, Brantford and Hamilton had no business being in the playoffs, but obviously Hamilton, they've shown they did belong, even though the record wasn't great. But as for Brantford, I really do not agree with the 2-win team being rewarded with playoffs. And I said to Dylan, I said, in the future, I hope they kind of revise it if they go to a 10-team league, to have 4 of the top teams out of each division make the playoffs and have the last place team out. Because Hamilton was competitive, no issues with them in the playoffs, but Brantford, they were out of their league against London.
You think about the Hamilton Cardinals too, is that they got rid of Justin Gideon. They sent him to Welland at the deadline. That's a fantastic player. Louis Jean, fantastic player. Tyler Duncan, a fantastic player. Sam Turcotte is the reason why the Hamilton Cardinals were able to beat the Guelph Royals. Game 1, shut them down on home field better than anyone was able to do that all year long. Then comes in game 5 with a blister on his throwing hand, on his index finger. Wasn't even supposed to start. We didn't even know he was going to start until he took the mound, and went in and did a fantastic job of just getting outs. Yes, did he allow some base runners? Absolutely. Did Guelph kind of shoot themselves in the foot by leaving men stranded? Absolutely. That Hamilton Cardinals team has a lot to be proud of, and they had every bit of business being in the postseason. Now, I do agree. If we do go to a 10-team league next summer or moving down the road, maybe it is something to play for, that you don't just make it to make it in the postseason. You don't get to host postseason games even if you came in last and had 2 wins. Why are you rewarded? I do agree with that, but in an 8-team league as it was this summer, it had to be that way because you're not going to go down to a 6-team playoff format and then give the top 2 seeds a bye, which is the math would have to work out that way. All that does is punish those fans and the owners and the team, and it wouldn't do anyone any good. So it was just, I think, the nature of the beast this summer.
Okay. I'm going to still talk about the Royals for a little bit. How do you see this franchise long term? Sean Fuller is the owner. Do you find the Royals are going to be around for a long time? And do you think, yes or no, Dino Romel will return in 2023 as the manager of the Royals?
I can see the Royals sticking around for as long as they've been around. I know they had a couple dark years in those late 2010s that kind of maybe had some people lose confidence in them. But with Sean Fuller, a young owner who is full of passion and full of blue sky thinking, and the sky is the limit for him when he thinks about this team. Think about Dalton Pompey. He went and got him when no one really, speaking to him without giving up too much, was approached by other teams and had no desire to go there in the IBL. He played in AAA for the Angel system last year, had offers to go to Korea, Japan, everywhere else this year, chose the IBL, chose Guelph. So there's something brewing here that I think that with the way the team is, there's a lot of local guys that Sean Riley, one of my closest friends, may or may not be done. We had a ceremony for him on game 1, prior to game 1 of the quarterfinals. And even after game 5, when we were all together, and he was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to go out like that. So the team itself, I think, will be a forever franchise right here in the Royal City. I think that the future of the team will look much different next summer for sure in terms of personnel. Dino Romel, I would really hope sticks around. He is a beloved manager, and I'll tell you a little story about it. Not only was he able to get his guys going and manage them well, but he also kind of let them make their own choices. Claudio was the one who said, I'm starting game 5. Claudio started that 43rd game against the Majors in London on the Thursday night, which was night 1 of the playoffs, which really kind of threw a wrench in that entire Royals playoff run. And then started, I believe, game 3 and won it in Guelph, and then DH'd every time he wasn't starting. But he believed in Claudio, and not just Claudio. Other guys that, are you ready to go? Do I have your trust? Do you have my trust that if I believe in you, don't make a fool of me? And Dino did a great job of getting that team going. And a little story that I wanted to touch on was there was a country night in Guelph just prior to the postseason. I think it was home game 20 or home game 19. So Dino decided with a couple of the veterans that he was going to tell the younger guys it was actually the week before. So he had all the young guys, hook, line, and sinker, show up in their country outfits, Daisy Duke shorts and cowboy boots, and Ben Reed, a Guelph guy, one of the relieving pitchers, showed up in, he looked like he was going to Boots and Hearts, and completely just kind of showed the camaraderie in that team of, they all owned it. Brandon Deans as well. A bunch of the other young guys were just, they took it and they sat in the dugout and wore their country gear for the entire game, even though it was a running joke behind their back. And it was something that really just showed how much that team had in common with one another, that I really hope that group can get back together. But that being said, with aging veterans and obviously guys that probably have a real hope of moving up in the world of baseball, Pompey, Custodio, obviously, it would be tough to sell me the idea that that team and that roster will look very similar next summer.
Pompey, is he officially done baseball completely, or do you think there's a chance he could still continue his career either in the IBL next year or with a major league farm team?
I can't speak to that. I'm not quite sure what Dalton's thoughts are, but I know he had a lot of fun coming to Guelph because it was, again, we only really got to know each other after the final game. He was obviously back and forth between Toronto, Mississauga, and coming here for games. So just speaking about it, we got to kind of have a bit of a hangout and talk shop, if you will, for a bit. And it's a thing of that you might say that you're planning on being done, but at the same time, there's a lot of tentativeness from a lot of them to Sean Riley, again, who will have no problem with me saying this, was ready, or maybe still is ready, to call it a career. But the way that it finished might have an effect on the second thoughts that may or may not change throughout the off season. And it's a long winter, right? So
yeah,
who knows? Sean Riley has 2 kids that are both, Aiden's now 10, Ryan, his daughter's 6. Aiden plays AAA baseball, he plays AAA hockey. Sean is very much integrated in being a coach for both of those teams. So there's those other responsibilities that, you've kind of forfeited when you're a guy like him playing baseball summer long, that, time doesn't last forever. So I can't speak to whether or their mindset of any of the players, but I can say that I know that there is it seemed to me that there was a bit of we let this one slip away somehow, or this one slipped away from us. And again, the schedule of the IBL is a nightmare. The schedule makers that have to deal with it, nothing but applaud them, because it is a tough 42-game schedule to make, especially when you look at David Hastings Stadium in Guelph. They share it with the Silver Creeks, which is another legitimate baseball team. So now you need to figure out how you can work around that. This isn't the NBA. This isn't the MLB. It's not the NHL. It's not the NFL. You don't have the schedule makers to have an algorithm to say, how are we going to make this schedule work with the other team's road games? So especially when you consider everyone else in the IBL's home schedules, and it's a thankless job, really, being a schedule maker in the IBL. And when you think about the fact that most of those guys have legitimate shift work or other full-time jobs as well, it's something that it's the nature of the league. And unfortunately, it does end up having a cause and effect on it that maybe it doesn't seem fair, but it's just, again, the reality of it.
Okay, I was going to say, I've heard talk about another 2 teams in the upcoming years. Do you think they will increase their schedule from 43 games to, let's say, maybe 50 with 2 extra teams in the league, possibly in the next couple of years?
I think that the 42 that they had this season was maybe a bit oversaturated, especially because we're dealing with Mother Nature. So when there's a weather delay or a postponement, it's real tough to try to find another day to reschedule that game for. And doing a doubleheader with the way that the rosters end up shrinking by, say, mid-late August when guys go back to college,
it's tough.
You can't run a doubleheader on a shortened bullpen, and it's just not quality. So speaking to a few of the players, I had mentioned, I think that, I love doing 21 home games. But that's 21 home games. I'm not thinking about the 21 road games you guys had to all get to and then ride home from, especially the way Guelph played on the road, which was very, very mediocre. So when you have to take that, say, 2-hour trip or hour-and-a-half trip to London and then play a ball game and then take the hour-and-a-half trip home on a midweek game, that's tough. And then when you go to Welland it's about as far as London would be from Guelph. And Guelph is lucky because they're centralized. Think about Barrie going to London on a midweek game. That is a hike. And then you have to go all the way back home. It's a lot to ask for, and that may or may not have an effect on a player's decision to stick around, because that's a commitment. And do you want guys, or do you want a team where a guy's like, okay, I'm not going to commit to coming to those road games like that because I have a family, I have a job, I have this, that, the next thing. Completely understandable. But why even have those games if it's not going to be a quality game? So in my opinion, I would say that them reducing the schedule back down, I think 36 was the norm before COVID. Okay. I think back to 36 or in that neighborhood may be a beneficial number in terms of quality of games. I think a lot of leagues try to oversell their schedule. When the NHL had the COVID shortened season and then had the play-in tournament, no one cares about those 72 to 82 game in the NHL. The regular season, writing's on the wall. Everyone knows what, for the most part, what's going to happen. But the play-in tournament, it's a best of 5 right there. It's every game is more meaningful. So, I mean, I would prefer to see a shorter season and then perhaps a best
Longer
of 5
playoff?
and then a best of 5 and then a best of 7 in the semis and a best of 7 in the finals, for example, or something to that effect, where I think that more postseason games where it's a nail biting, you need to win this game because the next one might not come. I think that'll sell. And I think the proof was in the pudding there with Game 5 against the Cardinals for Guelph, with the crowd that I would be willing to bet 80% of them were at the very most their second Royals game of the summer. That crowd was into it, and they knew what it meant, and they knew exactly what was on the line, and they were really, really rooting for their home team to win. And it was a special, special experience. And obviously going into extra innings made it seem more and more tense, but you could hear a pin drop at certain points in that game. And it was the biggest crowd they had all summer. So at other points, it was, you couldn't even hear yourself think. It was so loud. So when you think about it that way, it's, are you going to draw more of an allure to your crowd with more home games or more regular season games, or a better playoff push or a better playoff or postseason run? So to me, I would say 32, 34, 36 regular season games may be more of the recipe for success, and then you can get the postseason figured out from there. Especially if you plan for 34 games, let's say, that gives them the buffer of the games that need to be rescheduled. 42 games in, I believe, May 10th was supposed to be the first home game for the Royals, May 10th or 20th, and then up until the end of August 2018 through 19th or 20th. So call it 3 months. And they had 42 games in 90 days. That math sounds wrong when I say it out loud, but it was mid-May until mid-August. So that's 4 months, excuse me. July. So 120 days, you have 42 games. That doesn't really lend you much relief in terms of needing to reschedule. And I know there's a lot of teams that weren't blessed with the weather that Guelph got on Tuesdays and Saturdays for home games, that it ended up kind of just causing a bit of a headache for every team, every manager, and the league, trying to find a way to get all these games played out in a finite amount of time.
And I was going to say now, too, now that the Guelph Nighthawks are in Calgary, I'm not even going to get into that stuff. I already I voiced my opinion on that. It's now important to have a strong Royals team during the summer, because obviously you got the Guelph Storm during September to April or May, and then you got the Guelph Griffin Sports. Obviously, we'll talk about them in a bit, but now it's important. Now the Royals now have the city to themselves sports-wise from May until probably August.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that Sean Fuller and I spoke, and we were coming up with ideas that unfortunately just didn't quite get off the ground in time, in trying to draw more fans in before the postseason run. And it was, as simple as, let's get some hard copy, nice looking tickets printed out and go hand them out to bars and restaurants and stuff that are downtown Guelph, which is a stone's throw away from the ballpark, and have them hand them out to people on Saturday afternoons. You come in and purchase a meal or a drink or what, you just come in, here you are, take one. And if you don't show up, fine. If you do show up, maybe you fall in love with the team and the sport and the league. And then you'll come back next weekend with friends, family members, children, whatever. And maybe you have a new lifeline of new fans that really could be the difference in having a team being supported or not, and becoming winners or not, and making them legitimate or not. So unfortunately, it was just, again, with the way the Royals season started and not being a participant last summer, it was a lot for everything to kind of unfold the way it did. The broadcast being brand new, it was a lot of 11th hour planning for all of us. And I feel I'm proud of what myself and the rest of the Royals brass were able to put out there for a first shot at it this summer.
Okay. Hey, Scotty, are you still good for time for a few questions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll get into this one as well. Can you just tell my audience just a little bit about yourself and when did you decide you want to pursue a career in the broadcasting industry as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I decided I wanted to do sports broadcasting when I realized I wasn't that good at sports, but I liked them. I just wasn't that good. So I think around 16 or 17, I realized that I had more of a knack for the knowledge of the game in terms of being able to verbalize it rather than actually exercise it. So broadcasting school, journalism school really came to the forefront of my mind around 11th grade, I'd say, grade 11. And I applied to Carleton for journalism, Fanshawe Western split for media studies and journalism or something to that effect, which is actually, oddly enough, where I would have preferred to go over the journalism at Carleton, and Laurier Brantford. And so by the time grade 12 rolled around, that's where I knew I wanted to apply. However, I was an early birthday and I knew I wanted to go back to high school for next year anyways. So when acceptance letters came in or didn't, I actually got into Laurier Brantford, and then I got into Carleton for media studies, which was sort of or communications, excuse me, which is sort of a show me you can do it and then we'll let you into journalism. And so my first two choices were Western Fanshawe split and Carleton journalism. But my first real choice was going back to high school. So I said, perfect. The way it unfolded, now I know what choice I want to make. So I went back to high school and worked on a journalism class that kind of was implemented for just one semester. And unfortunately, I don't believe carried on for much longer. Lisa Richards of Magic 106.1 was actually the teacher, and she was fantastic. And getting to know her was something that kind of cemented the idea of that's the kind of person I want to work with. And this industry seems like it's kind of built for my personality and vice versa. So I then reapplied after my victory lap in high school and got into Carleton for journalism, and lasted about 6 weeks. It was theory of journalism, and I was just like, all I want to do is talk about sports. I don't care why this industry I don't care what started journalism. So I came back to Guelph and circled back and thought about how am I going to do this and actually learn how to train myself to be on television or be on the radio and present what I want to present the way I want to present. So I went back to my high school counselor, who is, again, you graduated 2 years ago. Hi again, Scott. So I spoke with her and she said, you know what, Niagara College has a really good broadcasting program.
Yes, I've heard about that.
And it's in Welland. So,
yeah.
So I did apply to that program. It was BRTF, radio, television, film, and got in. And the first year, it was so BRTF being broadcasting, radio, TV, film. So the first year, you don't have a choice. You have to go through all three of the major programs, which is what I just mentioned. So radio was great. Chris Jenneret, who was the son of Rick Jenneret, was one of my teachers.
I was going to mention that.
He is a fantastic and funniest. Him and I got along like no others. So he liked me, which made my life easier because it was very enjoyable to be around him, and we had similar interests in terms of hockey and every other sport and music and everything else. And then the television side was kind of where I wanted to go anyways. But thankfully, after year one, it was, do you want to do radio, TV presentation, or do you want to do film, television production? So radio, TV presentation was what I wanted anyways. So I had the chance to kind of continue to pursue the radio side. And Chris and I were two peas in a pod type thing. So it was nice to have him there, but knowing that radio wasn't necessary. I don't want to pick this just because I prefer working with him. It was just, I would prefer TV anyways, but I didn't have to make that choice ultimately. So through that, and then after year two, I knew I was near the top of the class and knew I actually had a knack for it. And that was what was most kind of confidence boosting was having these guys that they're not going to be nice to you for no reason. If you're going to work hard and you're going to deserve it, they're going to tell you. If you have zero natural ability, which natural ability doesn't come so naturally, but it comes with the desire to want to be good, that you seem naturally good. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So people, like you said, Dylan Baker's a natural. As a young kid, he's a natural, but don't you dare take anything away from him. It's because he has thought about it and he has mastered that craft in his head already. At such a young age, he's half my age. And the kid is going to be something special. So in the IDL, we're lucky to have him around for now, but I wouldn't be holding my breath to hang on to him for too long, because someone out there is going to see and hear him and say, scoop him up now. And he will be on his way to Vin Scully kind of fame. So, and it's not about the fame. It's not about anything like that. It's just about, you know what, I like talking about sports, and I know I have a bit of a way of saying things that it makes it more entertaining. And that's the thing, is like, I just always try to go in and cover these games and say, don't take it too seriously. Try to be funny, but also informative. So after second year at Niagara College, I knew that it was not just in my head that I thought I was, you know, maybe a little bit more adept to it. So after our first semester of third year, was on to internships, and I actually got offered, I was in the running for the Sportsnet scholarship, or internship rather. And my best buddy in my class actually ended up being awarded it, and no word of a lie, he deserved it a lot more than I did anyways. But he went out of his way to go talk to the Sportsnet representative, saying, this is Scott, you know, he equally could have been the recipient, and went out of his way. And the guy was like, yeah, we'll take you too. And for some reason I was like, you know what, I'm just going to figure out, you know, I think that I could have won it had I been as committed as Nico was. And Nico won it because he had the commitment and cared more and deserves it more. Yep. So now I want to look inward and say, what am I going to do? And I decided to come back to Rogers TV Guelph for my internship, which was, Guelph's been home since I moved here when I was 12 years old. And now when I leave the city for a night or two or whatever, I get weirdly homesick from this place, because it's a very warm city. And I'm sure other people from other towns probably have a different opinion maybe, but when I come home, it's just, I wanted to be here, and I kind of missed being here every night. So Rogers took me in, and I interned with them for a spring, and then got offered a role doing Guelph Life television from Jan Hamilton, who is my second mother. So if she sees this, hi Jan. Sweetheart, and just an amazing person who really, really did a lot for me in terms of helping my career kind of go from just being an intern to being now a host of a show. And I was kind of at that limbo of, where is this going to go? Rogers TV is one thing, and it's periodic work. And I mean, I want to cover hockey, and with the Guelph Storm broadcast the way it is, it's pretty much spoken for. And there's no chance that I would A, ever go step on anyone's toes or attempt to, or B, think that I would even have a chance of being able to. So that was kind of like, that is not even an option. It's not a path. It's already taken. So then I started thinking to myself, what can I do that's not covered? And so Jan and I came up with the idea of covering the University of Guelph hockey team just as a periodic week wrap type thing, because there was really no coverage. It's kind of like the IBL before there was any TV coverage. So I would do just interviews at practice and kind of do a feature every week. And it was what it was. It was just, and that year, that team actually went on to go from losing 11 straight games in November going into the Christmas break, and then finishing sixth in the West, going on to winning the Queen's Cup on home ice, all within a 4-month span. And they didn't have a live television broadcast at the time. So within that next summer, I was just kind of scratching my head saying, you know, what can I do? And then I reached out to Denang Balsera, who was the producer of the Gryphon-Vision broadcast right when it started. And I was like, you know what? They have an annual homecoming game in February called the Frosty Mug. Reached out to him asking if he would give me a chance to do it. And he said, you know what? We have a home game the week before. Why don't we see what you have? And I went in there and nervous as ever. I did pretty well for my first one. And he came down after and said, you know what? You're on and you can do this every game. And I shook his hand before he changed his mind. So I did the Frosty Mug after that. And then that kind of blossomed into doing not only men's hockey every home game, but then men's women's hockey, and then men's women's basketball, and then the Griffins football as well. So 5 teams for the University of Guelph. And then I got the call from Rogers TV to ask, if Trevor Pryor can't make it to host a game, would you be interested in filling in? And the answer is obviously yes. And Trevor was nothing but great to me when I would. So it wasn't like, it was almost like there was no animosity of the younger guy coming in to fill in when he's not there. He didn't see it that way, and that's not what it was. It's just a matter of having those people that are able to see what you're trying to do without getting maybe their back up about it. And Trevor was exactly supportive and fantastic about helping me out and making sure that I'm getting a chance when I can.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do when I do camera work with you guys, is to watch Trevor and you and how you guys do your interviews, not to copy you guys' styles, but just to see how you make the conversation. And it's not like an interview, it's how you speak to the player and stuff like that. And Eric Smith of the Raptors, who came on my show too, said natural conversation makes for the best TV and radio, and that's been a big help. And just watching how you guys do it really has helped me as well.
And yeah, we still have some time. I'm good for time, so we're at 47 minutes now, I think.
Yeah.
But whatever we can do, I will touch on that for sure. Because so when I started with the Griffins doing the hockey stuff, nervous again and very green still at that time, even though I'd been through TV school, and you don't have that confidence because you can't replace reps. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. The better you're going to have a mentality going in. And Chris, you helped me out and were my camera guy for the 3 games I filled in for Trevor throughout the March break. And I can go right back to that moment of my first time I filled in for him in a preseason game. I was too nervous and not prepared enough. And it messed with me because I knew I could have been much better. So when I went back in at March break, I went in with the confidence of I can do this. Stare down the camera. Yes, I can do it. And just be fun and have fun with it, because the more you try to make it perfect, it's never going to be perfect.
Absolutely. When I first started doing this podcast 2.5 years ago, I was brutal. I was doing it on Instagram Live. I didn't look at the camera, and I was trying to make it into a perfect show. And that's not how you do it. And the word you mentioned here, Scott, is reps. The more you do something, the better you get at it. And today, you're my 194th episode and my 192nd guest they've had since March of 2020.
And again, 194 and 192 guests, you're going to be 194 times better by the time that it's all said and done. And it's how it works. And if you don't try to, you know what you're talking about. That's the thing. With doing what we do, it's you just ask the questions that you would ask. That's why you have the position that you have. I was trying when I started with U of G Griffins. I would have a script written out before the game saying yada, 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 word for word, like verbatim. I would try to memorize it. We don't have a teleprompter. It's nothing like that. So I would have the script written out, maybe an 8 to 12 sentence paragraph. Never do that. Don't do it. So I would then get antsy and ad lib halfway through this script that I'm trying to see in my brain as I'm talking, and realize that I can't now say it the way I was married to saying it because I just went off script. So then I went to, how am I going to find a different way? And I just figured out my way for me. And if it works for anyone else, by all means, adopt the method. 3 or 4 points, 3 or 4, maybe a 5th, just to be safe, to open up a game, a hockey game. Hi, welcome inside the Griffin Center. Maybe forget to tell people my name sometimes. I don't know. Not about me anyways. So start out and then just know what you want to talk about. What's important of this matchup? If it's a playoff series, then what has happened, and do your homework. Know the stats. Know that if this team was fantastic on the power play in the regular season and this team was the most penalized in the regular season, probably something you should mention, obviously. And then you kind of talk about how it unfolds and then just mention notable things. And again, just try to make it natural and segue. If you can do it, you can do it. So if you're able to hold a conversation about sports in a group of friends and enunciate, and my thing was fast talking was an issue to start. So your pace has to be something that you have to be aware of. And if you have to deal with that like I did, it's you feel like you're talking at a snail's pace when you're speaking at a normal rate. And when you talk too fast and try to say too much too quickly, you trip over your tongue, and that's where things go sideways. So it's again, the reps are all I can say is that's what taught me the best is that, yeah, missing out on opportunities is something I refuse to do. I'll say no to nothing, especially even still, but learning from your mistakes. The amount of times I've cringed before watching my broadcast back, uncountable. The amount of times that I've sat there and been like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I was fearing. More often than that was worse. But when it was worse than I feared or is just as bad as I had feared, I would show it to other people after, like, just tell me the truth. And I think that was hardly noticeable. But to me, it was a learning curve of what did I like about it and what caused me to not like what I did. Rate of speech, trying to say too much, trying to over-articulate or sound too smart or spit out too much in terms of stats, numbers, anything. You can be vague to a point in terms of, you don't need to necessarily know the stat to the nth degree. You just need to be able to kind of verbalize the fact that this is a strength of one team and this is weakness of the other, and this is how it might play out, and that's what's important. And then what I do too is what I learned was that when I watch doing baseball play-by-play, for example, first year I've done baseball, first year I've done play-by-play. Who do I like to listen to the most? Dan Schulman. Take it how he says it. And for me, I would almost got to the point where I would watch and notice the pauses in his speech during the game. Does he have to be talking during every pitch or during every at bat or every swing? Or does he just kind of let the play do the talking itself? So it's things like that you start to learn that the reason why people like Dan Schulman are where he's at is because of those little things that obviously there's more than just one or two little things. He does all the little things right. And he's a fantastic broadcaster that make him that fantastic broadcaster.
And I've had him on my show too. He's a great guy. I didn't think I'd have a chance in hell of getting him on, but he came on as well. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up with you too is listening skills are huge with this because sometimes you can ask a guest a question and they can give you the answers to 10 more questions. So it's okay to write stuff down on paper and stuff, but listening skills is huge. And also, I've also learned this too. Let your guests keep speaking until they pause, and then when they pause, then you speak. So I'm still learning all these skills all the time on each episode.
Well, I can definitely confirm that because I've been run on sentencing for a while. So I did notice that, and that was something that took me a while, was that no one cares to hear me talk as much as sometimes I would when I was interviewing someone. Hold the microphone in their face and let them finish, and then it sucks when you pull the microphone away a little too early.
I've done that.
So have I. So it's the things that you're picking up on them real quick, Chris, is that you let them talk until they're done speaking, and you just kind of allow it to flesh out regularly and naturally, and you hope for the best. And nothing worse than an interviewee that gives you a one word answer, and it's
Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick.
Greg Popovich. And that was my nightmare when I was younger, was that I never want someone to be able to give me a one-word answer. So open-ended questions were obviously, you got to do that. But my other thing was to get players respect. So when I'm interviewing the Griffins hockey guys between the first, second, and after a win, I would never do a post-game interview after a loss for them, because they're not at that level of, it's not their obligation to do it anyways yet at the university level. It's not like it's a part of their contract, because they're a university student. So I would say I'm not going to go bug one after a loss, because it's going to make for very, very not good TV. No one wants to be questioned after a loss, and it's not like it's going to be a good interview anyway. So all it's going to do is piss them off and go poorly. So I learned that one. I was like, I'll just do a post-game wrap myself. And that way, and it came to the point where they all kind of noticed that I wouldn't ask for interviews after a loss. And in passing, they're like, yeah, we appreciate the fact that you haven't tried to interview one of us after a loss. Because would I want to be interviewed after a loss? Not really, no. And do I want to stand there on camera with someone after a loss? Not really, no. So it's things like that, and getting players respect and earning their trust. And, you hear things, especially being where I am with the University of Guelph. I'm on the sidelines, I'm rank level, I'm friends with certain guys on certain teams, and you hear things that, don't need to be repeated, they're not even a story, it's nothing worth talking about. And I find that even up in the pro levels, people would leak that kind of stuff just to get a click. And what it does is it runs you out of favors and runs you out of trust real quick too. So for me, it was just always, obviously being a University of Guelph broadcaster, I'm never going to, at this stage, kind of pigeonhole a guy and ask them a question that wouldn't have a good answer. And for me, if I can say one more thing, it's about how you ask the question is how that player is going to remember it. What went wrong in that period? Okay, that's a stupid question. We're down by 4. They scored 4, we scored none. What can you do better in the second period would be a better question to me, which is effectively the same question with a different response. A positive spin on a question. You don't want to put the guy in the headlights with, hey, you guys really got run over there. What went wrong? Everything. It's more of just how do you try to make it seem positive, and it's all about perception too, right? So it's just those things that I learned, and that was always something that came pretty naturally to me, was that don't ask a guy a question like that. And if they're giving you their time between periods or between innings or at the half, don't waste their time with a dumb question. And I've seen time and time again on major networks these cookie cutter questions that are like, really? Yeah. That's your question? You had 20 minutes of hockey to think that one up, and that's what you asked, and you're on a major network. You can't think for a minute, and you see the guys' reactions on their faces. It's like, do you think that they're happy that you asked that? And it was a meaningless question with a meaningless answer going to come after it. So yeah, it's been a learning curve, but it's been fun, and I hope it's nowhere near over.
And I was going to say, with the guests, I try to build their trust, respect, and rapport. And when I do a live interview, Scotty, I've been doing wrestling interviews, and I've been doing some of the London majors as well. I talk to them before we go live and just say, hey, is there something that's kind of a sensitive topic or something that's you don't really want to talk about, just to get a feel with them. And then if they tell me, hey, no, anything's fair game, or if there's something, subject that's off limits, then I respect them. I'm not going to say to them, okay, I won't talk to you about the subject and then bring it up on live TV, because these guys are going to remember if you're being a dick to them or not, pardon my language. And to me, it's just build trust, rapport, and respect with these guys, and credibility as well.
Well, that's the thing, is asking them, oh, is there anything you don't want me to touch on? Sometimes they don't know how much you know either, right? So it's always good to be like, okay, if you probably already have an idea whether or not you should ask about that question. If you have to ask them if it's okay to talk about it, I would say for the most part, it's probably not specific. Like, specifically, can we ask you about this? The answer is probably no. If you have to ask about it, but yeah, is there anything you want me to stay away from? Is always a good one, because then it kind of opens up the door of, you know what, you didn't tell me not to touch on it, but at the same time, you would not, if it's a gray area kind of subject. And again, that's where I would go with, it's about how you ask about that gray area subject. That question that may not be a positive question, maybe, the team really seemed to have animosity from within and lacked camaraderie. Tell me about that. That's not how you would ask that question ever. You could say, what can this team's chemistry or what can this team do to build more chemistry moving forward? It's something that you don't touch on necessarily a certain sore subject, but you mention or tip your cap to the idea that, it could be improved upon, but let's not focus on what went wrong. Let's focus on what can go right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's exactly to your point. Just like it's how you build people's trust. Because if you, and again, without naming names, I've talked to professional athletes that have been kind of pigeonholed and blindsided by questions that may or may not even have been directly prohibited from the interview prior to it starting. But even if it was directly said, no, you can't ask me about that, or it was understood vaguely that stay away from it, or even as a human being, how would you feel if I asked you about it type thing? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You're never going to get that player back or that coach or anyone back for a second interview. And you know what that's going to do is that's going to get your reputation tarnished. They're going to go tell their teammates and their coworkers, this girl did ask me this question. And like, all it's going to do is make that person who asked the question look shady and untrustworthy and unlikable.
And exactly, and I agree with you, and that's why I've been able to get big name guests on my show, but I've also been able to get local guests on my show. And also, when somebody's not sure about coming on, they'll look at my work on YouTube or social media, or they'll talk to somebody that knows me or has been on my show, and they'll say, yeah, this guy is a good guy, you can trust him or whatever. And that's how you do it. And like I said, you build a rapport and trust.
And a reputation. And yeah,
reputation
exactly.
is huge.
It's if people say good things about you, you're way more likely to get someone to agree to it if the person that they know has a positive feedback of you.
Absolutely.
So yeah. And for the people, even if you're on a network, the people that get that soundbite that may be the news of the day one time, guess what happens to those reporters, those hosts, those broadcasters? They don't get very many more. And the only way they do is out of league obligation from a contract that the player or the coach or the manager has to continue to answer their questions or their requests for interviews. And then what you get from that interview subject is not going to be a fully fleshed out answer, and it'll be a short-lived interview anyways, even if you do get them back.
And I was going to say, when I originally started my show, it was called 30 Minutes Live with CDP. But soon as I started getting guests to come on, most of them, they would say, hey, 15, 20 minutes, but they would go past that because they enjoyed talking with me. And then eventually I just scrapped the name of the show and just got rid of it because it's a time constraint. So now it's just Live with CDP Sports Talk. And whatever my guests say they can give me for time, I work around it. I'm flexible. If they can give me 15 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour, then I just work with it. But I've been very lucky. Most of my guests, majority, have been able to wanting to talk to me for 45 minutes to an hour. I've even had some shows go for 2 hours. So that is a good sign as well.
Well, I'm telling you right now, one answer out of me today would have been 10 minutes long. So it would have been a pretty quick one if we went 10. But I'm content and happy to keep going if you have anything else you want to know, or if you want to touch on.
Yep. Two questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, two more questions if that's okay, and we'll wrap it up with the Storm too. But I was gonna say, who are some of your most memorable interviews and stories you've done so far in your career?
For interviews, there's a pair of them, and both of them actually involve Andrew Masters, who was the goalie for the Guelph Griffons. The one back on February 15th of I think 2017 was my 27th birthday, and I was interviewing him after a win, a big one, and I think it was game one of round one at that time. And one of my friends was on the team and actually a roommate at the time came up behind me and gave me the old shaving cream in the face. But what he didn't know, the roommate, was that I actually borrowed his tie that night. He had left for the rink early, and I couldn't figure out where my black tie was, so I went to his room and borrowed his tie. And post-game interview, he has a paper plate full of shaving cream, and trust me, it wasn't whipped cream. It was shaving cream because I accidentally got some in my mouth, and I don't want to know why they had shaving cream in their locker room, but that's neither here nor there. So I got that in the face, and I was halfway through a question, and I was wiping my face off with a towel that the team gave me, and then continued the interview. And as we were finishing, I looked over at my roommate and it's like, just so you know, that this is your tie. He's like, oh God. So it was a funny moment. And unfortunately the video did get corrupt and there's no way for me to find it on the internet because we did search high and low. But from my recollection of the way I can see it unfolding, it was halfway through a question or asked question, he's answering, and I think my mouth was open and I just got eyeballs up the nose, down in the mouth. So then wipe off with a towel. And remember when Mrs. Doubtfire, when Rob Williams wipes off the shaving cream? Hello. So I went back and finished the interview and then closed out the show with that kind of like the borderline of my face was caked with shaving cream and just down the neck. And it just made me feel like I was, these guys actually appreciate me. And, it was a birthday thing and it makes you feel like you're a part of it too. Right. So that was one. And then my other favorite one, I think off the top of my head would be with Andrew Masters after they won the Queen's Cup in triple overtime. And Andrew Masters, he's a heck of a guy. When he would do an interview, he had this thing where he would just stare at the camera while he answered my questions. So instead of looking at me naturally, he would just glare down the camera. And it was after, again, a triple overtime gold medal win. And I think I asked him 2 questions, and I think he dropped the F-bomb about 5, maybe 7 times. And it was just like he couldn't stop swearing. And I was standing there just laughing after the first question. And I asked him another one, and it was like quickly 3 more F-bombs within 2 sentences. And I was like, you know what? Just go ahead. See you, buddy. Enjoy the win. And it was hard for me to keep a straight face, which I don't even think I accomplished doing that. But it was just one of those moments where it was just a candid moment. He wasn't nervous to answer my question. He was talking to me like a friend. And it was just that it was a great interview and the shot was perfect. We had it set up with all the guys in the background getting the team photo. So I sent him off after the 10th F-bomb to go get in the photo. And it was just obviously a special moment for that team, and covering that game was fantastic and probably the peak of my career so far. And another thing I can mention is the Anthony Hall feature I did for the Griffins home opener last Saturday, or I guess 2 Saturdays ago now. A 5-minute feature, and I was legitimately, it was about his outreach work to the Guelph community, to Willow Road School, and the mentorship program that he's running and that he created himself, and something that I think touches anyone's heart, but it had me in tears mid-interview, and it was just a special moment. It was the first time I had met Anthony. So for him and I both to be teary-eyed, and we got up and kind of gave each other a hug after, and Denang Bolsera, who edited it, kept that in the interview. I watched it back after, and it just seemed like it was as genuinely as it felt when I did the feature, it came across that way. So that's definitely one of my favorites for sure too.
I was gonna say you could have maybe one day write all this stuff down and write a book one day.
I should start writing it down because One day
Good
I'll be
stuff.
old and forget about it.
Enjoy being 32 because I'm 50 now, and it's just time. As soon as you hit 30, I found time sped up really quick. Like I said, I wish I could go back to my 20s again because I was in a hurry to grow up early, younger, and now it's like. But you know what? Being 50, I'm staying young because doing this podcast with Rogers TV, I'm around people that are in their 20s and 30s, and they're great with me, and they don't look at me like, hey, what's this 50-year-old guy doing? They treat me like one of their own, and yeah, and I'm able to work with people of all ages now.
Yeah, and it's Chris. We've talked about that multiple times before. Is that if anyone were to kind of look at you as what's this old guy doing here, that's a them problem. And I'm happy to know that. I mean, you've been so well loved and embraced at Rogers and at the University of Guelph since you started there too. It's just you're appreciated, and the fact that your passion is to start a career at 50 and try to find a way to build your own kind of resume right away and trying your best. You're trying and you're succeeding and you care. And that's the thing. No one really should or would care that, oh, what's the 50-year-old doing? First of all, I saw you run the 40-yard dash. You didn't look 50 in your 40-yard dash.
I still have a competitive spirit in me, even though I haven't played sports in 20 years.
50-year-old man. And that's the thing, like you make it fun and you make it enjoyable. You come with a smile on your face and you're happy to be there, which makes it infectious to be around you too, right? So like when we work together, I prefer to be with you than 90% or maybe everyone else, because I know you and I are just going to have fun and it's going to be lighthearted, and it's also going to be you're as big of a perfectionist as I am with it. So you want it to be the best. You care.
Yes.
But you don't take it to the level of being a jerk about it, where certain people in certain professions can be. It's like, okay, you want to be the best in it. In this industry, it's about having fun and making it fun. And for me, I feed off of the people I'm around. So it makes my job easier to be around someone like you.
Like I said, and I try to make my shows here fun. And when I'm with Rogers or even with Gryphon-Vision, I want to do a good job. I care, you're right, and I also want to keep learning. And the thing is, I'm probably my harshest critic, because I guess sometimes I want to be perfect, but it's not always going to be perfect and stuff like that. But sometimes it's within me. I'm the harder on myself than I think anybody else could be.
And I'm the same way. And that's the thing, is like when I was touching on earlier about how, I would cringe before I'd watch something where I thought I messed up. And then my girlfriend is fantastic, because I've told her, I'm like, do not be nice to me about this. Tell me what you think. Give me your legitimately harshest review or critique. And she would sit there. I'm going to leave the room because I'm not going to watch it with you. And because I'm sitting there, if I'm sitting there watching what I know I'm going to be upset with, it's going to be obvious. So she would sit there and write down one or two things, because if she wrote down nothing, I know she was lying. And the things that I was most maybe dwelling on, it wasn't even at the top of her list or on the list necessarily. So it's those things that, like, we dwell on, those little mistakes that we make, and it's to the average, to the person watching the game recovering, we are not the center of their focus.
Absolutely.
They're there to watch the game. They're not there. They don't care about my questions that much. I mean, that's the thing, is like, I've told my friends and my family and everyone that I watch a broadcast differently, because I focus more on the production and the presentation value of the actual broadcast, as opposed to what's happening on the field or on the ice or on the court. Yes, I still pay attention to the game fully, but I'm more tuned in when they do a sideline hit. I'm listening and just kind of sitting there like, could you have been better yourself? Like, it's just those things of could I have said it better? How would I have said it better in my head? So just things like that. And it almost distracts you from what the average viewer is looking at. But At the same time, it helps me realize that those little mistakes probably no one was paying attention to. So it is a little bit of help with that, but it's not even about that. It's about just trying to be perfect at your craft. And as I genuinely believe sports hosting and sports broadcasting is a craft, it's an art form. You show me an artist and I'll show you a tortured person, because there's no such thing as an artist who does not dwell on their shortcomings. 1,000 compliments and one critique is one critique. Those 1,000 compliments do not matter. So
I'm still having trouble when somebody gives me a compliment, because I'm just so hard on myself. I'm used to the, oh, you did this wrong and that. And when someone does give me positive feedback, I'm still learning how to take it as a compliment instead of getting defensive about it.
well, because you find that it's like, oh, they're just being nice when they give you the compliment? Oh, they're just saying that? It's just something people say.
Yeah, and I guess I came from a negative environment for many years, and I'm just not used to getting positive feedback. So it kind of catches me off guard. And like I mentioned before, I'm really hard on myself as a camera guy, and even on my show and doing my freelance media work. I guess I'm kind of want things to be as good as possible. Create, what's the word? Create good content.
Right. And creating good content, I mean, and don't ask me how to answer this one, but the creating good content, you're never going to be perfect. So it's a matter of just coming to terms with the fact that, the idea that you care enough that it bothers you that it wasn't perfect is a good stepping stone. But trust me, don't dwell on it too long, because there's going to be something else that is going to bother you the next time out or the time after that. So I do see a lot of people that it's very clear to me when a lot of people that are in our industry are mailing it in, and they really don't care anymore. And it was just a below mediocre interview, and mistakes were made to the point where, like, it doesn't eat them up, which is, envious at some point. But at the same time, it's like, if it doesn't eat you up, why are you doing it? Because
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are you okay for like 2 quick questions? And this one I had to ask you. Quick
yeah,
thoughts on the 2022-23 OHL season, and just again tell my audience a little bit about your role with the Guelph Storm broadcasts in the past.
So the Guelph Storm broadcast, I will touch on in a moment, but the OHL season is going to be a crapshoot. I think the Storm themselves are going to be fantastic. Cam Allen is likely at this stage now going to be a top 3 or 4 defender in the entire OHL. Jake Carabella and Matt Poitras are going to be right up there too. And that team is just going to continue to fill out the way that they were, because that trade they made last year with Braden Guy coming into town, yes, they lost Marco Sikic, but it kind of may have been more beneficial to those young guys to get a guy like Braden Guy in there. And it really seemed to change that team's kind of dynamic and demeanor as a unit. And don't fool yourself. In the OHL, careers are very, very short. Like you said, you get old real quick and time goes faster. I was fortunate enough to billet younger Storm players when I was younger, and the amount of times that the turnover came from being a 16-year-old billet brother to now they're 18, 19, and then off to a different league, it was wild to see. And it was very kind of like, it kind of brought you back down to earth of these kids, like, again, like Cam Allen. He went from being a 16-year-old 3rd overall pick, I think he was, for the OHL. He is going to be a Drew Doughty-esque kind of player in my mind this year. He is going to be something super special to watch. And Michael Bushinger on the back end too. And then you have Carabella and Poitras up top. The team is, it seems like they're going to be right there in terms of the timing. And that's the thing in the OHL, is that you need to have those kind of players that are all kind of at their peak, but not peaking enough to make it to the AHL or the NHL. So get an overager that's going to come back potentially that can then be plucked by an AHL team and be sent there as opposed to staying with the big club. It kind of handcuffs the team so you can't have that many 19-year-olds going into the 20-year-old year, obviously, because the OA rule anyways. But the Storm themselves seem like they're really really on the right track. And it's just, the coaching staff is fantastic. And I think the team really had the crowd behind them last year after having so many months away from the rink, and the crowd finally getting back to full capacity. You could see and feel and really live with the energy that was in there when we would cover games. And I mean, I was only fortunate enough to fill in for Trevor a few times, and I mean, happy to be the understudy of Trevor Pryor still, because it's a great opportunity and the broadcast is fantastic. Steve Fitzsimmons, who's the play-by-play guy, has given me opportunities up in Hanover as well. So it's just one of those things that you network through, whether it be the producer, the director, or another on-air talent or a camera guy. You meet people in the industry, and it really helps build your potential resume and maybe the portfolio.
Absolutely. And you said the word right there, networking. And I've made friendships, but networking contacts, and like I said, how I got with Gryphon-Vision is through knowing you through Rogers TV, and how I got into Rogers TV with knowing Karen and Steve Fay from the Guelph Nighthawks. So it's just amazing. It's not always what you know, which is important, but it's also contacts and networking as well. Very huge in this industry.
And I said it a little bit earlier on this evening, but I've said no to nothing in terms of opportunities, because you never know. It doesn't mean that someone's going to go watch that game I went and covered for no compensation one night. Not necessarily. But if I meet someone that's behind the scenes that has an opportunity, that's where the olive tree kind of branches out. And nothing worse than wanting to kick yourself for turning down an opportunity and wondering what if. So I very much recommend that if anyone's into this industry and wants to make a career out of it, just take whatever opportunity is presented to you, and don't be afraid to go up and shake people's hands and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you, and listen to them and see if they have any sort of desire to go in the same direction as you. And who knows what can happen from there, right?
Absolutely. And I have my own digital business card on my computer's done, and I got my own digital card I carry with me at all times, and hand out to people who might be able to help me or in the future in the industry as well.
Yeah, and that's not having it and needing it is the worst kind of thing. Having it and being able to use it is fantastic, but even having it and not needing to use it that day, at least you still had it just in case.
Yes.
And I just noticed your last question there on the bottom there. So yeah, my advice to people who want to pursue a career in broadcasting one way or another, just get your foot in the door. Realize that you're probably going to have to do some things for free. Don't let that bother you. It's actually really fun. And if you enjoy it enough, it doesn't really feel like work. And you cover a 3-hour game, those 3 hours go by real quick.
When you do something enjoy, like our show right now, is at an hour and 24 minutes, but it seems like it's only been 10 minutes because it's gone by quick, because we're enjoying our conversation.
Exactly. And that's, if anyone wants to get into it, Chris and I can both tell you that there are opportunities, paid and unpaid, either or, take them both. And if you have a knack for it or desire to have a knack for it, reach out to me on Instagram. It's scottfraser.tv. If there is anyone who's actually listening that is looking for an in, definitely reach out, because there are opportunities that are way more presentable than maybe you would assume. So it's a great industry to be in, and it's always one that is looking for people who are committed to making it the best it possibly can be. Because for me, when I've had camera guys that don't really give a damn about how it works, if they just want a part-time paycheck, and if it was the best interview or the best open hit I've done, and then I go to watch it back and the camera guy's all over the map because he doesn't care, that's what's frustrating. That's when it's like, okay, that sucks. That because of his lack of attention or her lack of attention, I can no longer use that as a pride piece. And having people that actually want to be into it is what makes you very much welcomed into the industry and onto a broadcast team.
Absolutely, and I love being part of even doing camera work. I love being behind the camera and being part of a broadcast, and every member is important from the producer down to the camera guys. Everybody has to do their job to make it a good broadcast as well.
Yeah, especially Winston. I told you he'd show up at some point, and there he is. But never been a cat guy until I met this little guy, and my girlfriend's cat is now my son. So depends on the day.
Does he like Temptations, those treats?
He does when he runs out of food and his mom's gone. That's all. That's what he got fed for a day.
Yes. I have a cat named Latte. Latte.
Latte. We were thinking about getting another one, and it's just funny to think of the most long-winded cat names are some of the funniest. But yeah, no, he's
absolutely.
He makes life a lot better. And I mean, growing up with golden retrievers and chocolate labs and all that, I never thought I'd have a bond with a cat like this guy right here. So happy to have him around. And depending on the day, in the moment, he either loves me or sometimes he stares at me like he is right now, and it's not really that comfortable. But I'm happy to keep answering any questions if you have any more. Otherwise, I appreciate you having me on, Chris.
No, that's pretty well it, Scott. But you have an open invite to come back on my show again in the future, and maybe one day I can have you come on my live audio show on Twitter Spaces. Even though you're not a Twitter guy, I'm using that platform now to do the radio side of it as well. And everyone complains about social media, and there are pitfalls with it. But if you use it the right way, the tools are just amazing. Because without this technology, I wouldn't be able to do this show or do my live audio show as well.
And that's the amazing thing too, is the way that the technology's advanced in the last few years. It makes it so much more accessible for anyone who's trying to break into the industry to just do it, because prior to that, the cost to run a radio or a podcast show would be astronomical. So it's great that the timing for you and myself is still right there. And I had a ton of fun doing it today, and I'd be happy to come back whenever you'd have me.
Okay. Well, Scotty, I'm going to let you go, but thank you for coming on live with CDP Sports Talk Season 4, Episode 29. And we should see you on Saturday, September 24th for the Griffins homecoming game, I believe against Queens at 1 o'clock kickoff at Alumni Stadium.
All of those things are correct. And what they've done there at Alumni Stadium is amazing. Stu Lang and Kim Lang, his wife, have been such a big part of making Guelph even better, a better version of itself than it already was. The amount of time, money, and blood, sweat, tears, and heart that Stu has put into that Griffins program and that Alumni Stadium. His wife very involved at the Guelph Humane Society. They just built a $5 million updated facility for all the animals that need shelter and a new family. So it's all on them, because you go there and it's a party, and it is a heck of a lot of fun. And Guelph back on the winning track at 1-2 now. So the next home game, homecoming, September 24th against the Queens Guelph at 1 p.m.
Okay, and where can people find that broadcast on then if they want to tune into it?
OUA.tv if you can't make it to Alumni Stadium. Again, Pete Cobb and Sean Moynihan are our play-by-play and color team, and Madupe Okewal and Justin Dunk, a former CFL and U Sports superstar, also on our panel. So it's quite the broadcast. And it's, again, if you can't make it to the stadium, which I would always recommend, make sure you tune in to OUA.tv.
Okay. Well, Scott, I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much again. And make sure you spoil your cats and stuff like that. Pets are number one. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you on social media. Give me about 20 minutes and I'll have this downloaded to audio version. And I will send you a link on your Instagram. And also I'll send it to you on your text as well.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much, Scotty. Have a great night.
You too.
You too. Thanks. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my talk show podcast tonight, Season 4, Episode 29 with Scott Fraser. He's a co-host of Guelph Life on Rogers TV, and he also does work for Rogers TV with the Ontario Hockey League, the Guelph Storm games, and he's also the YouTube play-by-play announcer for the Guelph Royals this past year, and he also does work for Gryphon-Vision for the University of Guelph as well. And speaking of get another Guelph show on Friday, the next Live with CDP Sports Talk show, Friday, September 16th, this Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Guests are going to be Ryan Drury and Amber Campbell previewing the 22-23 Guelph Storm season. Ryan is the color analyst alongside Steve Fitzsimmons on Rogers TV, and Amber Campbell is a longtime volunteer with Rogers TV and a very good camera person as well. So it should be an interesting show on Friday at 2 o'clock with Ryan and Amber coming on, and we're going to talk some OHL hockey and about their time with Rogers TV and what their thoughts are on this 2022-23 Guelph Storm team. My only concern with this team going into this year is the goaltending situation with Owen Bennett not reporting to camp. It doesn't look like he'll be with the team anymore. And Jacob Oster and Dixon Grimes are still two unproven young goalies. So it should be very interesting. So I hope you guys can tune in to my next live with CDP Sports Talk this Friday, September 16th at 2 o'clock with Ryan and Amber as well. And again, I want to say a quick shout out to Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road in Guelph in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check their website out at barrycullen.com or give them a call at 519-824-0210 as well. And that's where I get all my cars from, Barry Cullen as well. And they are the official sponsor of the Live with CDP Sports Talk show as well. And before we go, guys, just to let you know, the Live with CDP Sports podcast, the audio version is downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn as well. And also, guys, just to let you know, you can follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. I just need 29 more followers for 1,000, and then I can start doing my talk show live on my TikTok page as well. And that's about it, guys. I'm going to wrap up this podcast show. But again, I want to say thank you to Scott Fraser for coming on today for season 4, episode 29. And I hope everybody has a great night. And before I wrap this up, guys, check out Twitter Spaces tonight. That's Twitter Spaces on my Twitter page at Chris D. Palme at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tonight. Myself and co-host Nick Small are going to do the Argo Bounce weekly live audio show on Twitter Spaces, and we're going to talk about the Argonauts win of 24-19 over Ottawa this past Saturday in Ottawa. And Nick is an Argo super fan and a CFL fan, and I'm looking forward to speaking with Nick tonight on live audio on Twitter Spaces at 8:30 tonight. Again, you can check it out at Chris D. Palme. At Christy Palme on Twitter, and it's called Twitter Spaces. And you guys are welcome to come on and talk to me and Nick about the Argonauts, the CFL, and ask us some questions as well. That's about it. Anyways, I hope everybody has a great night. And for some of you, I'll see you guys on Twitter Spaces at 8:30 tonight with Nick Small talking about the Toronto Argonauts. Everybody, I hope you have a great night. And otherwise, we'll see you Friday at 2 o'clock for another edition of Live with CDP Sports Talk. Good night, everybody.